I'm very happy, as I always am, to be back here with you in this room with David Davis after intensive negotiations which have been held here in Brussels over a number of days and indeed a number of nights. I would, as I start this little press event, I would like to thank the members of our two delegations most personally, because they've worked very, very hard, coordinated as they were by Sabine Weyand and Ollie Robbins. I would also personally like to applaud the whole of the United Kingdom negotiating team for their commitment and competence. Ladies and gentlemen, as I've said on a number of occasions, this is an international agreement that we're working on. It is an international agreement between the United Kingdom and the European Union, an international agreement with all the precision, all the rigor, and all the legal certainty which pertains to any such international agreement. And what we're presenting to you today here with David is a legal text, a joint legal text, which constitutes, in my mind, a decisive step, because we were able this morning to agree, and after all those days and nights of hard work, on a large part of what will make up an international agreement for the ordered withdrawal of the United Kingdom. Decisive step remains a step. We're not at the end of the road, and there is a lot of work still to be done on important subjects, including Ireland and Northern Ireland. But this decisive step will be presented by me on Friday at the invitation of the President Donald Tusk and alongside President Juncker to the European Council. Before that, tomorrow I shall be meeting ministers from 27 member states, on behalf of whom I negotiate, during the General Affairs Council, and I will also be meeting the Brexit steering group of the European Parliament. And on Wednesday, invited by Jean-Claude Juncker, I will take stock of the negotiations before the European Commission. But it is the European Council on Friday which will assess and judge the state of the negotiation. And as far as I'm concerned, I shall continue in the name of the Union to meet you regularly and to report to you on these negotiations in full transparency, because it's with that full transparency that on the 28th of February we published a complete draft withdrawal agreement, which of course we discussed beforehand with the 27 member states and with the European Parliament. And on the 15th of March, that's just 2 weeks later, just a fortnight later, we revised and consolidated that draft agreement, having included comments from member states and from the European Parliament. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's that draft agreement that we've been continuing to work very intensively with my team and with the team from the United Kingdom, and having done that, we've just published a few moments ago, jointly with the United Kingdom, a new version of the draft, which is colour-coded with 3 colours, and symbolically I'd like to show you what we've done. This is the whole thing. I recognize that you might not be able to read it, some of you at the back of the room, but you will be given a text in just a very few short minutes, and you will be able to ponder it and pore over it page by page. But this is a sort of overview of the articles and protocols of the draft international withdrawal agreement. Now, what you see in green there are the things which are now formally agreed between the negotiators. That's what you see in green. What you see in yellow are some of the points where we have a political agreement, but which still have to be clarified over the next few weeks. In white, the text that was proposed by the Union, our text, on which we shall continue with our discussions, either because On those subjects, we still have disagreements or divergences, or simply because we just need more time in order to go down to the level of the detail. But you see the text in front of you, symbolically on the wall behind us, and I'd like to make 4 comments. One is that our discussions over the last few days have made it possible to find complete agreement on a legal translation of the points which were agreed in December in the joint report on citizens' rights and on the financial settlement. And that makes it possible today to reassure to the 4.5 million citizens, British and European, who are affected and concerned by Brexit. Those are the people who have been our priority from the day one, the priority of the European Parliament and the priority of the Member States. And it's also possible to reassure all those who run or benefit from projects financed by the European budget during the period 2014 to 2020. For the citizens, in the text that we have today, there's an additional option, which is the possibility to obtain a new residence status in the United Kingdom from the transition period. And this option will make it possible for those citizens who wish immediately to have the kind of legal certainty that they want on their right to reside after the transition period. Second comment on the text. We've reached an agreement on the transition period, on which the European Council in December had given its agreement in principle, of course, after the request made by Theresa May in her Florence speech. The transition will be of limited duration, as was requested by the government of the United Kingdom and by the European Union. During that period, the United Kingdom will no longer participate in the European Union decision-making processes, simply because after the 30th of March 2019, it will no longer be a member state. Nonetheless, it will preserve all the benefits advantages of the single market, the customs union and European policies, and will therefore be required to respect all the European rules, just like member states do. Now, we've committed to working during that period in good faith and to continue to respect the principle of sincere and loyal cooperation. Finally, we agreed that British citizens and European citizens of the 27 who arrive during the transition period will receive the same rights and guarantees as those who arrived before the day of Brexit. I would like to remind you that the period of transition requested by the United Kingdom will be a time which is useful, very useful, for the United Kingdom administration and businesses in order to prepare themselves for the future. For example, by negotiating during that period agreement with third countries. That period of time will also facilitate our own preparation on the European side. And finally, the period of the transition will be a period during which we will need to finalize our future relationship. And that's a short period of time to do so. So it will be a negotiation which will be intense and demanding on our future partnership. Our intention is to move forward as quickly as possible, to start as soon as I have a mandate to do so, via guidelines from the European Council on all the subjects of the future relation in parallel. And I think it's even possible, I'm speaking personally, that we might be able to agree, in particular during that period, on a future ambitious partnership in foreign and external security policy. On the other subjects of the separation, I would like to welcome the progress that's been made over the last few days on certain points, such as, for example, finalizing on customs procedures, movement of goods and the monitoring of them, commitments of the United Kingdom in nuclear matters, or protecting European trademarks. On those subjects and on others, my team will be more than happy after this press event if you have specific or more technical questions to ask. On the other hand, other negotiations must continue on other subjects of the separation, non-negligible subjects, such as, for example, geographical indications, data protection, and the automatic recognition of rulings. Fourth thing I wanted to say, we do have to make progress. I did say that we're not at the end of the road. We do have to make progress on a couple of points of divergence which are of primary importance. First of all, the governance of the withdrawal agreement and questions related to Ireland and Northern Ireland. On the governance of the withdrawal agreement, we've confirmed the solution which was agreed in December for matters related to citizens' rights. That is settled, but we still do have to settle the governance on all the other subjects of the withdrawal agreement.
On Ireland and Northern Ireland, we must have a workable and practical solution to avoid a hard border and protect North-South cooperation. The EU and UK agreed to include in the withdrawal agreement text published today a note on how the Irish issues will be dealt with. We have agreed the following. 1. Both sides remain committed to December's joint report in all its aspects. All. 2. We have agreed that the issues identified in the EU text must be addressed for finding a viable and legally sound solution. 3. In particular, we agreed today that the backstop solution must form part of the legal text of the withdrawal agreement. 4. We have also agreed on some elements of the protocol, notably those related to the common travel area and North-South cooperation. As I said several times, the backstop will apply unless until another solution is found. This is what I also discussed this morning with the Commissioner Simon Coveney. We are ready to look at all options which allow us to meet our objectives in a constructive way. This is what I have underlined on the same terms in my recent meetings with the leaders of Sinn Féin, the Democratic Unionist Party and the Ulster Unionist Party. Ireland and Northern Ireland form a distinct strand within the framework of the negotiations of the UK's orderly withdrawal from the EU. I repeat, within the framework of the withdrawal. In this context, we have agreed with the UK on a detailed agenda for discussion over the coming weeks. Mesdames et messieurs, pour conclure.
Ladies and gentlemen, just to conclude, I would like to say that I think that over the last few days we've trodden an essential part of the road towards an orderly withdrawal, which I have been working on ever since the first day of this mission. We will continue, and we will continue to bear in mind that all the points that I have just mentioned are part of a same agreement and have to be agreed together. And I would like to add that legal certainty on all these points, including the transition, which is part of this agreement, will come only with ratification on both sides of the withdrawal agreement. Nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. It's up to the Member States now to assess this progress in order to adopt guidelines which will enable us to start in parallel to discuss with the United Kingdom on a framework for our future relationship and the future partnership. And of course, in the light of the various different resolutions, the European Parliament will also proceed to assess this progress. Thank you very much for your attention, and let me give the floor with great pleasure to David Davis.
Michel, both for your words and for your kind words about our team. In December, we reached an important milestone by achieving agreement on the first phase of negotiations. And today, we've taken another significant step by reaching agreement on the next phase, which I'm confident will be welcomed by the European Council when it meets later this week. Our teams have worked hard and at pace to secure the terms of a time-limited implementation period that gives the certainty demanded by businesses and citizens across the European Union and United Kingdom. And at this point, I'd like to join Michel in commending both our negotiating teams for their skill, their commitment, and from time to time their ability to go without sleep. In my speech in Teesport in January, I set out a framework for delivering a bridge to the future, one that sees the UK formally leave the European Union on the 29th of March, but which gives everyone time they need to prepare for the future by ensuring our access to each other's markets continues on current terms. The deal we've reached today does just that. As Michel outlined, we've taken a decisive step by translating much of December's joint report into the legal text of the withdrawal agreement. In only a few weeks, we've managed to finalise the chapters on financial settlement and citizens' rights, delivering on our commitment to provide certainty to citizens. So let me take each point in turn, starting with the implementation period. Throughout this process, one message has been clear from business in the United Kingdom and across the European Union, that they need to be able to plan for the future with confidence. Businesses need not delay investment decisions or rush through contingency plans based on guesses about the future deal. Instead, they now have certainty about the terms that will apply immediately after our withdrawal, meaning that they can continue to operate and invest with confidence as the design of our future partnership with the European Union becomes clear. And this is true across the whole United Kingdom family, because the territorial scope of the withdrawal agreement makes clear it includes Gibraltar. We continue with our positive dialogue with Spain, with the Spanish, on how we improve cooperation in the future. The implementation period is not only about providing certainty in the short term, it's also about beginning life outside the European Union, serving as a platform on which we build our future relationship. Which is why, as Michel has said, the United Kingdom will be able to step out, sign and ratify new deals, new trade deals, with old friends and new allies around the globe for the first time in more than 40 years. These will come into force when the implementation period is over, providing new opportunities for businesses across the United Kingdom and seizing one of Brexit's greatest opportunities. And during this period, we've agreed that those international agreements which arise from our European Union membership continue to apply as now. This provides further certainty for businesses who can be confident there will be no disruption to their existing trade relationship as we leave the European Union. To ensure our agreement is faithfully and fully implemented, we are establishing a joint committee made up of representatives of the United Kingdom and the European Union. This committee will provide a way to resolve concerns as they arise, and will be underpinned by a clear commitment from both sides to act in good faith. One of the key objectives I set out in my Teesport speech was that the United Kingdom will be able to make its voice heard during this period and ensure our interests are protected. This delivers on that objective. We've also agreed specific safeguards when it comes to annual fishing negotiations. These arrangements will only apply for the negotiations in 2019, since we will still be a member state for those that take place at the end of this year. Through 2020, we'll be negotiating fishing opportunities as an independent coastal state, deciding who can access our waters and on what terms. For the year where it is relevant, we have agreed the European Union will have to consult us ahead of negotiations, and the United Kingdom's share of the total catch cannot be changed, protecting the interests of the United Kingdom fishing community. The final way in which the implementation period serves as a platform for the future is in foreign and defence policy. As recent events demonstrate, close cooperation with our allies is central to standing up for a rules-based international order. So when it comes to foreign policy and defence collaboration, we have set out a plan for an ambitious partnership, one that goes beyond the relationship the European Union has with any other third country. And I know this desire is shared by our European Union partners. The deal we've reached today envisages us moving to that partnership at the soonest possible moment. And in the intervening period, our valued cooperation will continue. However, as is the case today, there may be occasions when our vital national policy means we cannot agree with the European Union decision. In those cases, the United Kingdom can choose not to apply it. Securing the implementation period with these key flexibilities is a major achievement. And if it was all we achieved since December, I'd be proud of my team. But in addition, we've made rapid progress across the wider withdrawal agreement, reaching agreement on much of the legal text and locking down entire chapters on citizens' rights and the financial settlement. Most importantly, this means that, just as we're giving certainty to businesses, we're also providing the same for citizens. And in doing so, we've reached agreement on the package that should apply to those who arrive during the implementation period itself. A few weeks ago, we proposed a pathway to settlement for EU citizens, which was welcomed by Member States. Today, we've delivered on the spirit of this offer and also made it reciprocal, using the December deal as the basis. In doing so, we've made sure the voluntary reference mechanism we agreed in December will start when we leave in March 2019 for any challenges relating to applications for settled status. The reference mechanism relating to other rights, such as social security, which are only relevant after the implementation period, will begin in December 2020. Of course, there are areas where there's more to do before we can finalise the agreement as a whole, one of which is Northern Ireland. Make no mistake, both the United Kingdom and the European Union are committed to the joint report in its entirety. And in keeping with that commitment, we agree on the need to include legal text detailing the backstop solution for the border between Northern Ireland and Ireland in the withdrawal agreement that is acceptable to both sides. But it remains our intention to achieve a partnership that's so close as to not require specific measures in relation to Northern Ireland, and therefore we will engage in detail on all the scenarios set out in the joint report. We have also reached consensus on the full set of issues which need to be addressed in any solution in order to avoid a hard border, which is why last week we set out a work programme to tackle them. There are also some elements of the draft protocol, such as a common travel area, on which we agree. So while there is as yet no agreement on the right operational approach, we know what we need to do, and we're going to get on with it. In December, we set out a shared ambition to reach agreement on the implementation period as soon as possible. Today we've achieved that ambition, thanks to the hard work and late nights of both our dedicated teams. Now, alongside progressing the outstanding issues in the withdrawal agreement, our attention must turn to the future. In Munich and at Mansion House, the Prime Minister set out a powerful vision, one which will ensure our economic and security cooperation reflects our unique starting point and our shared history. My job, and that of my team, is to deliver on that vision. And in doing so, we must seize the moment and carry forward the momentum of the past few weeks. The deal we struck today, on top of that agreed in December, should give us confidence that a good deal for the United Kingdom and the European Union is closer than ever before. Thank you.
Paddy Smith, Irish Times. A couple of questions. You talk about a limited implementation / transition period, but you don't say when it's going to end. Have you accepted the position of the EU that it will end at the beginning of 2020. Sorry, 2021. And secondly, has it been possible at all to incorporate the language of the paragraph 50 in the joint agreement on Northern Ireland, and specifically the commitment made by the British government that there would be absolutely no question of impediment to trade from Northern Ireland across to the UK? Is any of that language going to be incorporated, as in fact the DUP has been demanding? Finally, is there any significance to the use of the colour green in the text?
Are you starting or me on this one? All right. Firstly, it's December 20, and yes, it's 21 months, which is near enough to the 2 years we asked for. The aim in the whole exercise with respect to Ireland and Northern Ireland is to uphold the Belfast or Good Friday Agreement in its entirety, is to ensure, therefore, there is no hard border, and to deliver a border, therefore, which is no impediment to any trade between Northern Ireland and Ireland, or indeed between the United Kingdom and Ireland.
Non, parce que si on avait pris le bleu,
if we'd chosen blue rather than green, red maybe for points which are not agreed, and white, blue, white and red, I mean, you'd have started thinking things. I like green as a colour. And as for the rest, when I started talking, what I said is that what's important for us, and what is clearly indicated in the text on the cover page, which is included in the draft that you'll see later on, that whatever, there has to be a backstop in the withdrawal treaty when we sign it in autumn. I think that if between now and then new proposals are made which provide at the same time, in the respect of all the dimensions of the Good Friday Agreement, for the absence of a hard border in Ireland, and that respect the European internal market, which the Republic of Ireland will be part of, if better solutions are presented, we will examine them. And that's the spirit of the joint report. As was the need to have a backstop.
Taking particular responsibility for it. All I say is, after we leave the European Union, I think our traffic lights will still be in the same colour.
Okay, and I had Paul. Go ahead. Yep. Have a mic next to you.
And from ITV News. Firstly, Mr. Davis, hasn't the UK government broken all of its promises by legally agreeing that a hard border in Northern Ireland is now a genuine possibility? And what certainty does a transition deal really provide if there's still a huge question mark over the Irish border? And to Mr. Barnier, you will never use the fallback option of a hard border in Northern Ireland because the Irish don't want it, and surely you've passed your point of greatest leverage now. We've got a transition deal, unless you're saying you're willing to bring the whole deal down over Northern Ireland.
Shall I start? The first thing to say, look, the United Kingdom government remains steadfast in its commitment to avoiding a hard border between Northern Ireland and the Irish Republic. That's something which was reflected by Simon Coveney today in a tweet, when I think he said earlier this morning it's a priority for both teams, European Union and United Kingdom teams. We've reached agreement on the terms of the implementation period. The legal text is locked down. As Michel says, this is a decisive step. And of course, both sides will stand by the commitments in the joint report. I don't know what more one can say to guarantee, as I said earlier, that we're going to maintain the Belfast Agreement, Good Friday Agreement as it were, no hard border and a continued peaceful outcome in Northern Ireland.
Peut-être à la charnière des deux questions qui ont été posées.
I think that one thing that's relevant to both questions, I'd like to tell you something about the spirit in which my team and the European Union are working on this question of the backstop. The solution is included in the joint report, and it was our responsibility to say something about how it would be operational, how it would in fact work. There's no ideological intention behind it. We absolutely respect the institutional order of the United Kingdom, and we think that in doing so and in respecting what the European Union is, it is possible to find a practical solution as of the kind that we've imagined, and I think that our proposal provides very useful elements to contribute to the debate between the different parties. As to the rest, I repeat what I said earlier on, nothing is agreed before everything is agreed, and that applies to everything in the text. As we did a fortnight ago, including the transition. I repeat, once again, the only legal basis in guaranteeing a transition is Article 50. So we have to have a complete agreement on the orderly withdrawal, because the treaty says so, and transition is part of an orderly withdrawal. It is to facilitate an orderly withdrawal.
One here on the front at the left.
Juan Samuel Melando from El Español newspaper. If I understood you correctly, Mr. Davis, you said that this transition agreement covers also Gibraltar. Is that correct? And can you explain under which conditions and which is the state of play of negotiations between United Kingdom and Spain? Thank you.
Yes, it does cover Gibraltar. That is our view of it. And we are having ongoing and very constructive negotiations with Spain, and they will continue, and I expect they will be productive.
Michel?
Just to flag up on this point, which is important, that Gibraltar leaves the European Union at the same time as the United Kingdom. Legally, we've specified the territorial scope of the agreement, but there's a reference which remains valid, which member states are keen on, all member states of the Union, on behalf of whom I negotiate. Twice, the 27 member states and heads of state and government indicated their position on the question of Gibraltar in total solidarity with the Spanish government. And it's in that spirit that this solidarity plays its role, and that the United Kingdom and the Spanish government bilaterally have undertaken discussions to solve a certain number of pending matters. The result of that discussion, which I hope will be positive, I do understand that bilateral negotiations are moving forward between the Kingdom of Spain and the United Kingdom. The result of those discussions will be fundamental for the application to Gibraltar of the agreement we're talking about.
James Crisp.
Thank you very much. James Crisp, Daily Telegraph. Two quick questions, if I may. Mr. Davis, what is the difference, I'm over here, sir, what is the difference between signing a trade deal during transition and immediately afterwards, which is what was the idea initially? And wouldn't any trade deal that Britain could sign in the 18 months be among the fastest ever agreed by any country? And Mr. Barnier, does this mean that trade talks between the EU and Britain can now begin in earnest? And if not now, when? Thank you.
I start? Firstly, the thing to say is that we intend to get on with the discussions over the whole future partnership, economic and otherwise, as soon as possible from now on, assuming the March Council triggers that, which I hope it will. And of course, there is no other trade deal like it in the world, because we start from the same position in terms of standards. We start from having a tariff-free arrangement already, and so we start from a position which no other two countries or two economic entities have ever started from in the past. So that's the first thing. Secondly, 18 months wouldn't be the fastest in the world, actually. I suggest you look at some of the things that Chile have done, but that's by the by. But the most important thing is we need to get on with this now. We need to come to agreements on this as fast as we can. That's in the interests of businesses within the European Union and businesses within the United Kingdom. Of course, we can't actually sign it until we're a third country, which is the moment we leave. But I would say this to start off with. This will be the biggest, most comprehensive, most effective trade deal ever.
One of the legal consequences, which is quite mechanical, of the decision taken by the United Kingdom to leave the European Union is that on the day they leave, 30th of March 2019, in a year, they're leaving 750 international agreements which we signed as the European Union with third countries or various parties. 750. The work that the United Kingdom has to do when it becomes a third country to establish or re-establish relations with all those partners, that work is a considerable amount of work. There's all the preparatory work, etc. And we think it's reasonable and quite normal that the time of the transition, when the United Kingdom is out of the European Union, should be used to carry out those negotiations with all those third countries and partners. And then at the end of the transition, those agreements, which would have been negotiated by the United Kingdom with all its partners, after the transition, they will be able to make those agreements operational. They will come into force. When are we going to start the discussion with the United Kingdom on the option which the British red lines lead us to examine now, the free trade agreement? First of all, we would need a mandate. Then we need guidelines. The European Council's job is to do that, and they're going to discuss this on Friday. And all being well, where if they note the progress that we have accomplished and that we're presenting to you today, and they lay down these guidelines, I will be mandated to commence discussions with the United Kingdom on all these subjects relating to the future relationship. Because we have to, we have to do trade in good conditions with the UK, but it's not just trade, you know. There are cooperation agreements in various other areas, security, legal and police cooperation. And Theresa May said things to this effect in a major speech in Munich. There is the strategic partnership on the external security and defence matters. So we'll be starting discussion on all these subjects. And I say discussions because formally negotiations can't start then, because you need to be doing that with third countries, particularly on trade matters. But we'll be scoping agreements. We'll be looking at the future commercial relationship from about April, when the European Council has given a clear mandate to do so.
You want the word to start? Okay.
No,
it's okay. This concludes our press conference. Thank you all for your presence. Thank you.